The Bloodmoon Hunters are a stalwart and dedicated non-codex compliant loyalist Space Marine chapter created during the 13th founding, the so-called Dark Founding. Little is known of this mysterious founding, as there are no reliable records that indicate how many chapters were conceived during this founding or what became of them. Extant records indicate that the Bloodmoon Hunters were supposedly created during this founding around the time a recorded prophecy foretold their inception. It is generally believed that the Adeptus Mechanicus might have played a role in the creation of this chapter, as their inception occurred sometime in early M35 during the divisive and widespread doctrinal conflict known as the Morier Schism. The Bloodmoon Hunters were known to maintain close ties with the Archmagus of the Cult Mechanicus as well, receiving a wide diversity of arms and weaponry, including power blades and relic weaponry of the finest quality, and rare, advanced patterns of armored vehicles and gunships. Founded in the 35th millennium as part of the mysterious 13th founding, the Bloodmoon Hunters were created around a time a prophecy was recorded. Under the blood moon of harvest, hunters of the immaterial will find not what they seek, but the answer to the question unasked. During the Morier Schism, the Bloodmoon Hunters were formed with close association to the Cult Mechanicus. The chapter was given 3 missions for its priorities. The first was to guard the warp corridor known as the Sanguis Porters. This was the only stable set of warp routes out to the fringes of the Ishtar subsector. This mandate would be the binding chain that kept them from beyond the edge of most known centers of power. The second was to support the fleets being sent into the far reaches of the fringes. And lastly, the Bloodmoon Hunters were to guard the Ishtar subsector as a whole. The Great Rift opens and the Noctis Eterna cuts off the systems of the Ishtar subsector from each other and the wider galaxy. As darkness descends across the subsector, a variety of threats threaten to seed burn in the fires of war. Corruption and heresy surges within the ranks of the local ecclesiarchy and mechanicus. Necrons emerge on Incendius Lux, Delta Lux and Crucia. The frontier worlds erupt into chaos as House Fasager, the Luna Venatori cavalry regiments, and Ishtar pioneers struggle to repel a tide of Drukhari, Orc Freebooter, Chaos, and Harlequin raiders. Orcs from the nearby Caradon Empire emerge near the Contrador system, sparking continuous naval battles. The penal world of contrition erupts in revolt, and Cornate cults emerge wherever penal regiments are stationed. Finally, the Bloodmoon chapter sees the Great Rift as the herald of the fulfillment of the prophecy of blood, and fervently seek to identify and defeat signs of the prophecy. The Primaris Marines of Kroll have yet to make it as far to the Ishtar Fringe corridor known as Sanguis Porters, but rumor has it a squad of Hellblasters in Bloodmoon Hunters' colors have made themselves known among the unnumbered suns and are on their way to join their brethren on the Eastern Fringe. As it stands, the Comorla Fayek has yet to make judgment on the rumors, nor on Primaris Marines in general. Like all on the front, they wait for proof of the abilities to survive the ends of the Imperium. On the former icy hive world, now turned volcanic death world of Igeat Fuil in the Dameter system, a single settlement protected by void shields exists on this world as a burgeoning society of techno-barbaric gangs. They are allowed to commit their gang warfare in the trade city as long as they don't attack offworlders and give a tithe to the Astartes overlords. The techno-barbarians use armored vehicles and scavenge from failed recon teams and aircraft from the wastelands due to the acidic atmosphere. But the risk of these expeditions and the rapidly degrading hull of the vehicles cause inter-gang warfare, as gangs fight for the loot and intact hulls for their own craft. The hardened youth, with an experience of armored warfare and technological expertise, are perfect candidates for the Astartes. The ancient hives that eked out a harsh living on the acid rain-soaked planet of Igeat Fuil was brought into the Imperial fold and would be gifted to the Bloodmoon Hunters chapter for overseeing the warp routes further into the Ishtar fringes that would become known as the Sanguis Porters or the Bloodgate. Few others make life out of heavily processed ancient lower hives of hives whose void shields have failed over time. The fortress ministry of the Bloodmoon Hunters is actually split in two. On the surface of Igeat Fuil, under heavy void shields, is the citadel known as Folsom's Keep. At Folsom's Keep, aspirants are gathered once they have made it through the trials for their initial training and indoctrination. Floating in orbit above is Leben Molly, a grand star fort designed specifically for the Bloodmoon hunters and their mission to watch over the warp corridors of Sanguis porters. Leben Molly is essentially a mobile battle station. In form and scale, it is nearer a planetoid than a conventional vessel. It is a mighty cathedral of war that dwarfs the largest battle barge and wields the firepower of a formidable fleet. The size of a large asteroid, its foredeck can dock a dozen Imperial Navy cruisers around its circumference. The hull of the starfort is many kilometers long, triangular in cross-section, with its upper surfaces bristling with weapons and sensorium domes. Every surface was clad in solid armor plating, and every angle was covered by more torpedo tubes and lance batteries than any Imperial battleship could muster. Countless smaller spacecraft, repair craft, and unmanned scouts orbited like supplicant jostling for attention, and the wake of the titanic engines seemed to churn the void itself with the force of their plasma fire. Its sides are studded with the maws of macro cannons, missile clusters, Thunderhawk launch bays, and plasma mortars, while the spires that rise from its surface are serrated with hundreds of defense laser cupolas. Any hostiles who boarded the immense ship might find themselves trapped in the tight winding corridors of the engineering and maintenance areas just beneath the hull skin, separated from the vast ship's more vulnerable areas by hundreds of automated bulkhead doors and whole sections of outer deck that could be vented into hard vacuum with the press of a control stud. Leben Molly is also home to all manner of Astartes training facilities. In vast domes, unique environments can be recreated in which the Battle Brothers can perfect their battle drill and rehearse their missions. Some of these domes have been stocked with life forms such as Deathworld flora and fauna in order to create the most realistic training conditions possible. Within Leben Molly are many places in which the Battle Brothers of the Bloodmoon hunters may hone their skills and temper their spirits. There are huge ranges housed in vast chambers where live-fire exercises and marksmanship drills can be performed in environments ranging from tangled ruins to liquid-filled tunnels or the chill of hard vacuum. Alongside these are hundreds of smaller melee and exercise chambers where new skills with blade, fist and body can be passed from battle brother to battle brother. Numerous clusters of armored fighting cages exist where battle brothers can test their skills of arms against each other. There are also libraries filled with tactical treaties, past mission logs and spiritual texts for the edification of a battle brother's mental faculties. For those Space Marines who are psychically gifted librarians, there are specialized warded and shielded chantries for a psyker to sharpen his own unique gifts in the Emperor's service. The armories of Leben Molly are located deep beneath its armored hull, secured behind the thickest blast doors, and internal layers of void shielding are the kind more commonly used to protect battle titans. This is the realm of metal and actinic light, of the beat of hammers and the fire forges that arm and armor the Emperor's angels of death. Many of the most exotic and potent weapons of the Leben Molly, however, are held within sealed vaults deep within the Leben Molly, accessible only to those who bear the secret of their opening. Vast chambers deep inside Leben Molly resemble a cathedral nave. Countless ragged, battle-scarred banners line the nave, some all but transparent with age. The high-arched oval tunnels that make up the majority of these vaults are lined on walls, floors and ceilings with the countless polished bones, teeth and claws of slain aliens. Some fragments may be inscribed with details of a Xenos type or who slew it and when, but most lay bare and unadorned in mute witness to the passing of their owners. Looping corridors connect a handful of larger sepulchres that display the bones of truly gargantuan monstrosities too big to fit elsewhere. Other macabre decorations can be found in these places too. Chandeliers made of alien skulls and spines hang beside fluted pillars of chitin and bone. Tattered sheets of Xenos hide hang like banners beside intricate mosaics of calcified shell. Centuries of accumulating slaughter have covered many kilometers of vaults already, and the work is ever expanding. Most Space Marines of the Bloodmoon Hunters find the Great Vaults to be a deeply spiritual, even meditative places. Here they may stand amongst the works of the brothers that came before them and rejoice in their triumph over the alien. the catacombs run through the lower reaches of the fortress, twisting runs of low, narrow tunnels that were perhaps once used for ducting and maintenance. Over the centuries, they have been gradually converted into repositories for accumulated Xenos lore. Here, great tomes of dusty learning lie beside vivisected specimens and forbidden bestiaries, all sealed by eternal guards of adamantium and wards of stasis against the dark day when such foes might rise again. To celebrate the hunting traditions of some of their battle brothers, a number of large cargo bays converted into facsimiles of rugged planetary environments, and they took to leading hunts through them against dangerous creatures captured for the purpose of training in their hunt. Thus, under the guise of sport and honor, Bloodmoon hunter leaders trained their teams to hunt together with practiced zeal through frozen hells, fiery deserts, and high waters equally well. Folsom's keep is armored and void-shielded to withstand any siege or bombardment that might befall it. Armed to repel attackers from land, air, or space, its walls bristle with enough heavy ordnance to flatten a hive city. Every aerial approach to the fortress monastery is overlooked by Icarus-pattern las cannons and a macro laser. The keep proper is dwarfed by the full bulk of the mountain, and only the very upper reaches have ever been delved into habitations. The upper reaches of the keep feature void-shielded arrays of incredible strength. Drawing power from the geothermal reactors beneath the keep, the void shield array is capable of repelling the firepower of entire fleets, making it extremely unlikely for an enemy to attack the keep from orbit with any hope of success. The keep's mighty flanks bristle with massive defensive batteries capable of throwing shells, torpedoes, and directed energy beams at anything foolish enough to come within range. The structure of adamantium, granite, and ceramite bristles with linked bolter turrets, rocket launchers, and static plasma cannons. This sombre keep serves as a shrine to the memory of fallen Bloodmoon hunters who battled the chapter's gravest foes. Whenever an aspirant undergoes this ordeal of initiation, he must first make a pilgrimage to this mighty edifice and call upon the spirits that lie within. A place of pilgrimage to test the endurance of the faithful and to serve as a memorial to unwavering devotion to the Emperor. The Bloodmoon Hunters are a non-codex compliant chapter that has been chronically under strength. To augment their numbers, the Bloodmoon Hunters chapter artificers began to augment line combat operations. Facilitating this was bringing auxiliaries in the form of chronogladiators and tech thralls under the control of the artificers armed with advanced heavy weaponry. Further, they bring into the field heavy battle servitors with advanced augmentics. The chapter is made up of 5 oversized companies that have been decimated from attrition, each comprised of squads and marines from the different schools. The chapter never fights as one, or even as whole companies. Instead, officers from the companies lead small hand-picked hunting parties comprised of a few squads. Due to their independent natures, each company has their own armory and motor pool, their own veteran formations, and handles their own recruiting. The gangs of eager yet foil are monitored for their potential. When a likely candidate for the Astartes of the Bloodmoon Hunters is observed, he is told that the representatives of the God Emperor would like an audience and to bring an offering of a hide from one of the great beasts of the wastelands. Once the potential hunter has found a suitable offering and was able to defeat it, the aspirant must traverse to the opposite side of the planet in the ravine and cave system that is the entrance of Folsom's Keep. To accomplish this, they must pass the trials of the hunters and face the various beasts that hunt the hunters. Once the aspirant has proven capable and clever enough to make it to the entrance, their final task is to hunt a master while under the influence of a special cocktail of drugs meant to test the mind of the aspirants. Those able to find and capture a master under these conditions are then inducted into the chapter. As a chapter, the Bloodmoon Hunters have been brought to the brink of extinction several times, but yet have managed to endure with strength when other chapters would have been destroyed. They have a remarkably grim determination to survive, and one of the Bloodmoon Hunters' hallmarks is the ability to adapt to changing circumstances and respond swiftly to the fortunes or misfortunes of war. This has tempered their character with a general disregard and suspicion of the mere trappings of honor and glory, favoring result by any means necessary. When faced with insurmountable odds, the Bloodmoon Hunters will change their tactics and withdraw to fight again, where more prideful chapters would perhaps choose to stand and die. The Bloodmoon Hunters value the art of concealment and utilize secrecy and surprise as paramount weapons in their arsenal. As a result, they have always cultivated in themselves an ability to see clearly through the fog of war and strike at the hidden heart of the enemy, where they can inflict the most damage and achieve their objectives, undistracted by the hubris or hidebound dogma. In order to attain such a goal, the chapter's battle brothers are trained in a variety of ways that are remarkably inconsistent with most other Space Marine chapters. Throughout the chapter, blind obedience is strongly discouraged. All of these Space Marines are expected to act upon their own initiative at the appropriate times. However, such actions must fit within the context of the larger battle scheme. Battle brothers consider unorthodox tactics during their preparation for any conflict. These include unusual deployment maneuvers and infiltration. Most times, they have gone so far as to assemble ad hoc units specifically appropriate for resolving a particular tactical problem known as a hunting party. All Bloodmoon Hunters' brethren are bionically enhanced in some way, for even the most recently initiated battle brother has had his left hand replaced with the iron-sheathed cybernetic gauntlet that marks his acceptance into the ranks of the chapter. Within a few years of their initiation, most battle brothers spot a burgeoning array of cybernetic augmentations, many of which stay hidden under their power armor. In many instances, these enhancements bolster the battle brother's combat effectiveness in some manner, influencing the tactics he utilizes on the battlefield. At the very least, replacing organic flesh with steel and ceramics increases the body's resistance to physical trauma. Individual Bloodmoon Hunters' brethren utilize a wide range of bionics that afford them capabilities beyond that of even the already superhuman Space Marines, including highly esoteric auger receivers bonded directly to the nervous system, inbuilt weaponry, and even, in some cases, additional limbs granting the battle brother the ability to carry especially cumbersome weaponry. The exact nature of the enhancements a Bloodmoon Hunter's battle brother undergoes is unique to himself. A lifelong program coordinated according to the Arcane Council of the Artificers. Even within the ranks of a single squad of battle brothers initiated at around the same time, there is little cohesiveness. On very few recorded occasions, battle brothers with a complementary range of enhancements have been grouped together into a single squad, or else squad mates have undertaken to coordinate their surgeries. Such squads rarely adhere to any particular pattern or standard doctrine, and their composition may never be repeated again. For augmentation, Bloodmoon Hunters generally prefer to get bonded to Cyberhawks and Hounds, using them extensively. Bloodmoon Hunters believe, out on the fringe like they have been assigned, they should make use of any advantage they can. Imperial support is limited by what the sector can provide generally. Bloodmoon Hunters in this vein hunt out any scrap of knowledge or tool that could give them an edge on the enemies of the Imperium. All Bloodmoon Hunters who attain command have served time in all 3 schools and then served with Artificers. Huntmasters are elected by the Commerial of Fayek, which is Huntmaster, the 4 Masters, the Master of the Forge, the Chief Apothecary and Chief Librarian. Forge Lords, at need, can stand in as proxies for the masters of their company. The 3 schools of hunting make up the philosophies in which apprentices and journeymen learn how to hunt the foes of the Imperium. As journeyman's skills increase, he may either specialize in a school or learn from the other schools, making his way up the chain of command. In character with their basic aloofness and desire for autonomy, the Battle Brothers of the Bloodmoon Hunters have an uncommon streak of individualism and self-reliance, for each one is born a survivor, a killer from the shadows, and the inheritor of a warrior lineage that descends from one of the Igay Edfwill's savage Deathworld gangs. Their aloof and autonomous ways are at odds with most other chapters. This has led to conflicts and rivalries when they are forced into close support of another chapter. With most other Imperial organizations, they would take charge of themselves and their brothers, but with other chapters, they chafe under what they consider inferior tactics. Only their own veterans can hope to manage the stubborn nature of these warriors. When the Bloodmoon hunters march into battle, they do so alongside a profusion of war machines and main battle tanks. The chapter boasts a great number of armored vehicles and dreadnoughts, so many in fact that each company maintains its own reverent armory of battle tanks and centurion warsuits. Bloodmoon Hunters Battle Brothers consider it a great honor to crew one of their chapter's venerated war machines and interface directly with their vehicles through bionic implants, their heartbeat becoming the thrum of powerful engines and their war cries the roar of heavy gunfire. The chapter shows a high degree of adaptability in battle, both in terms of tactics and the weapons its Astartes employ. When an enemy counters one tactic used by the Bloodmoon Hunters, the chapter plans accordingly, adapts, and changes strategy, enabling it to outmaneuver its enemies and catch them completely off guard. Flexibility and willingness to adapt to their situation represents the core of the Bloodmoon Hunters' combat doctrine. As they prepare to engage their opponents, these Space Marines are always careful to identify all of their assets and utilize them to the fullest means possible. These often include assets that are not identified within the constraints of the Codex Astartes. Even when operating well within the strictures of that tome, these Battle Brothers may choose to take measures that others might consider dishonorable. Vanguard hunters and apprentices recon the enemy. The apprentices identify ambush zones and lay traps, while the vanguard hunters utilize devious tactics to weaken the enemy. Those of the Lupine school would harry and draw in the enemy into ambush zones, where those of the Arachnid schools and artificers deploy heavy firepower. Then, Raptor School journeymen deploy and assault the enemy, forcing them to flee, where the hunting party then gives chase until all are slaughtered and the objective reached. Those of the Lupine School are usually deployed in tactical marine patterns. In keeping with their willingness to make use of every available resource, the Lupine School journeyman often takes direct charge of any Imperial Guard units available in a given theater. Rather than deferring to the organization's intrinsic leadership, these Space Marines deploy their members among the merely human forces and then take a direct hand in their disposition and tactics. The Lupine School journeymen are exceptionally well equipped with assault bikes, land speeders, and jump packs. Whenever possible, these Space Marines favor the use of guerrilla tactics and ambushes to deplete enemy forces prior to a more traditional engagement. Millennia of refining their techniques has enhanced their abilities to the point that these Battle Brothers are often able to decimate enemy forces through precision surgical strikes, minimizing the enemy forces present in future conflicts. Many Space Marine chapters exhibit a clear disdain for the use of concealment, secrecy, espionage, and counterintelligence. The Vanguard know, however, that it provides a limited number of countermeasures to overcome those who would use such deception against members of the Adeptus Astartes. However, the Vanguard journeymen enthusiastically and consistently apply these techniques throughout their battles. Deceiving their opponents as to the timing, nature, and objectives of an attack can often grant the Space Marines a significant tactical advantage. Similarly, by expertly scouting a region prior to launching an attack, the Vanguard are often able to insert their forces without their opponents realizing the number or nature of their opposing forces. Arachnid School journeymen are generally deployed as devastator marine patterns. The use of toxic gas, burning phosphor, and contaminated rat shells does not rankle their chapter's honor. Bloodmoon Hunter studies have an inherent resilience to toxins and poisons, which enable them to be deployed to war zones afflicted by the most hellish and lethal conditions, be they atomic, biological, or chemical in nature. Where possible, field fortifications will be used. Arachnid journeyman doctrine includes extensive use of fortification to occupy the maximum number of opponents, while using the absolute minimum numbers of troops. This in turn keeps the bulk of the Bloodmoon Hunter Marines fresh and available for assaults and allows them to achieve superiority elsewhere. Those of the Raptor School are generally deployed in assault marine patterns. Making use of bikes and jump packs, the mobility and speed of Raptor School hunters allow them to keep up with even the swiftest of foes. As the hunters that get those enemies clever enough to survive the gauntlet of the other hunters, these hounds are forever baying to finish the job. having a long tradition of maintaining highly adept biker units in its companies stretching back for millennia. Bloodmoon Hunters Raptors employ rapidly moving Astartes bike squads known as Ironblood Hunters. They are utilized principally in harrowing and running down a broken or scattered foe, and to counter-assault against flanking attacks or breakthroughs by numerically superior enemies in the field. While part of the Ironblood Hunters closes with the enemy, it is the land speeders piloted by Raptor School journeymen that ensure that the bike-mounted spearhead can reach its quarry. To do this requires vehicles and pilots as mobile and quick-witted as the bike formations themselves. The Ironblood Hunters advocate a fluid style of attack, and all its members must be ready to switch from well-rehearsed set-piece attacks to improvised breakthroughs or rapid pursuit of fleeing foes. In the Ironblood Hunters' unconventional composition, a single land speeder from their other Raptor brethren makes up a part of a standard attack squadron, while others, up to 5, are grouped into support squadrons that can be split as needed. This unusual doctrine has been developed because the Raptors use land speeders to perform a variety of battle roles due to their versatile weapons loadout. The Raptors can equip their land speeders for light probing reconnaissance, advanced scouting, tank hunting, seek and destroy missions, and so on, as required by tactical demands. The Artificers provide the additional manpower by following the teachings of the Cult Mechanicus in using heavy battle servitors and a selection of chemically and cybernetically modified criminals as chrono gladiators, and ad secularis with implanted explosives and vox into combat as expendable troops. Their tactics and attitude to them are a double-edged sword. Close coordination is hard for the Bloodmoon Hunters outside their own squads and hand-picked parties. Only the command and veterans are flexible enough to keep the various schools of hunting working together. Otherwise, when members of a school dominate a hunting party, it will end as their tactics being the most often used. Further, if the communications between the various groups break down, it could lead to some of them interfering with each other's plans. Loose coordination and use of individual talents are where they excel. Bloodmoon Hunters know not from which Primarch their geneseed descends from. The knowledge of their progenitor died when the veterans of the chapter were killed along with a large portion of their chapter in transit to the eastern fringe. When they finally founded their stronghold near the Forge World of Lux, they were a much weakened chapter. The Bloodmoon Hunters' greatest mystery concerns their history and the prophecy that was uttered at their formation. A large part of the chapter's ongoing quest into knowledge, recovering lost information, and in figuring out the prophecy of blood. Bloodmoon Hunter's gene seed condition produces warriors with finely sculptured physiques and finely controlled thought processes, with psychological tendencies driven towards personal achievements and competition to prove individual superiority. Like many chapters, the Bloodmoon Hunters also suffer from certain genetic deficiencies. The Bloodmoon Hunters' demeanor heavily reflects their combat doctrine. Generally reserved, Bloodmoon Hunters stay in the shadows until the right time to speak. When they do pitch in, they tend to be very recalcitrant and terse, often condemning the more direct tactics of their fellow chapters. Bloodmoon Hunters' gene seed produced a marked tendency towards suspicion and paranoia within the Astartes of the chapter, but also was known to create space marines who were extremely intelligent and possessed naturally well-developed problem-solving abilities. Many chapters indulge in trophy-taking, but the Bloodmoon Hunters have in the past gone out of their way to capture, master, and utilize weapons taken. Their superior mental acuity is achieved through their sheer drive, determination, and arduous training. This is because of the unusual traits of Bloodmoon Hunters' Astartes, which may derive from an unforeseen mutation within their gene seed, is that every hunter possesses a near-genius ability to observe, memorize, and adapt to any situation. This is what makes each hunter of unparalleled ability, for even the smallest signs can be tracked. The Bloodmoon Hunters chapter is highly unusual amongst its fellow Space Marines, and its modus operandi is quite different from that of the bulk of the Adeptus Astartes. The Bloodmoon Hunters do not fight as a single force, or even usually as full companies, but instead second squads drawn from the chapter's companies and make use of bonded cybernetic enhanced humans and creatures. The Bloodmoon hunters seem to bear little respect for anyone or anything, save the Emperor of mankind and the fabricator generals of the Mechanicus, for whom they have displayed fanatic and unquestioning loyalty. They tend to show no love for civility or defense when dealing with individual Imperial commanders and other Space Marine chapters, but they have been known to show pleasure in testing their skills against worthy foes. The quest for perfection in the hunt consumes the Bloodmoon hunters in body as well as spirit. For some, it was not enough to achieve the accolade of a perfect hunt. They thirsted to embody that perfection. For these warriors, it was not enough that the Emperor had crafted their flesh and shaped each with insight and knowledge no other could rival. Their granted transhuman state was simply the beginning of an unfinished path. Level 1. Improvement over flesh. The Battle Brother perceives his own flesh as a hindrance, feels that to become better, one must improve upon themselves with the use of bionics. Some beneath a shell of apparent superhuman normality concealed augmented senses, modified musculature, even surgical alterations to their brain structure. Level 2. Obsession of the thrill. The Battle Brother no longer feels like improving their body is enough. It's the hunt that is lacking. Now, the Battle Brother will set up even more extreme challenges to increase the thrill. These warriors cannot wait to prove themselves through success in their quest to seek out and slay dangerous or potent enemies and survive. Level 3. Everything is prey. No one and nothing is enough for that perfect hunt. Seeking greater challenges will push others away and create rivalries to get the most out of each engagement. Refuses to trust allies and feels that only their closest brothers can aid. The only warriors outside of their own tight-knit squads with whom they openly converse are the veterans, and even then their communications take place whilst out on shared patrols. Their stalkers' camaraderie remains dormant when in the presence of others not of their ilk. There is much rivalry between these warriors, and each competes to kill more of the enemy.